So in the next chapter of Deleuze and Guattari's A Thousand Plateaus, we're on to chapter 2, which is called One or Several Wolves. 1914, One or Several Wolves. And I take it that 1914 is the year that Freud was dealing with the Wolfman. And now this idea of one or several wolves, in this chapter, Deleuze and Guattari will go into their model for the psyche, which they will see now in contrast to the arborescent models, the previous models of Freud in particular. The arborescent model, where we have a single ego in relationship to an id and a superego, all of that is junked in favor of a multi-egoic psyche. Basically, for them, the psyche, as is everything else in Deleuze and Guattari, the psyche is multiplicitous. It's made up out of multiplicities. So we have all of these differing egos, and the way that the schizophrenic sees the world, from whence they draw their model, is very different from the way that the arborescent model sees the world in terms of a center periphery model, where, let's say, for example, the neurotic might see a sock as a substitute for a vagina. The psychotic, the schizophrenic, will see all the different weaves in the sock as a field of vaginas. So he'll see it in terms of the schizophrenic multiplicity, this multiplicitude of fragmented images. And indeed, I think that this model of the psyche is much more consistent with what has happened to the psyche in postmodernity than with, let's say, Gebser's model with the integral consciousness structure, which is space-free, time-free, ego-free, all of this stuff that I don't think applies very well to the situation that has taken place now. Nowadays, we are indeed functioning with the psyche as a norm, as multi-egoic, as fragmented into multiple selves. Basically, the schizophrenic model, I think, is a good one. And I think this has happened as the result. One of the main things that has happened as a result of this is information overload, as the result of a shift after World War II into an electronic society, where we have information beaming at the psyche from all different directions simultaneously, which causes a buildup of cognitive noise and in many cases can produce fragmented psyches. The films of David Cronenberg are a good study of this, in Videodrome and in films like Spider, in which you have the splintered ego is wrestling with all of these multiple selves that are struggling for possession to centripetalize the psyche and reintegrate it, put all the pieces back together, which it cannot do in any of Cronenberg's films, is his leading leitmotif, and it's perfectly consistent with the multi-egoic, schismatic nature of the psyche in Deleuze and Guattari. Also, this is a phenomenon, the celebrity is another example of this. This is a phenomenon I studied in my book on Dead Celebrities, Living Icons, in which the celebrity is composed of multiple selves as well. By accelerating him or herself to the speed of light with these electronic technologies, multiple selves are produced, these cloned avatars that then feed back into the psyche and create a buildup of cognitive noise, which destabilizes the ego, creates multiple selves, and a lot of psychological confusion, much of which one of the primary strategies of the celebrity to that, of course, is to drown all that noise with a descent into drugs and alcohol. So we get the addicted celebrity, and it's precisely the result of the impact of electronic light-speed technology on the psyche, where information is being beamed at it from all directions much more quickly than it can successfully integrate this information, and so you get phenomena like paranoia, schizophrenia, the breakdown of the psyche into a multi-egoic psyche, exactly as the NG see it in this book and prefer to see it. So they talk about, this chapter begins by them talking about Freud's treatment of the Wolfman, the famous case of the Wolfman, and he says that, or they say that, and so you even have to speak of them as a they, notice that the whole thing is consistently multiplicitous with them. They say that one of the dreams that the Wolfman has is a dream of a tree with wolves sitting in it and around it, and then Freud proceeds then to, applying the arborescent approach of the tracings, the molar unities, then proceeds to lay the stencil of the Grimm's fairy tale of the wolf and the seven goats on it and reduces all the wolves to specific individuals, or to molar aggregates such as the father or the mother, so that the wolves lose their multiplicity and they become simply, they're reduced to these molar aggregates. Jung does this same thing. The archetypes are molar aggregates which are attempting to destroy and remove multiplicity by conferring a single organic unity onto something. The mother becomes, Freud's mother becomes the great mother. Freud's father becomes the wise old man. The ego becomes the hero. but in each case it's the same process of reducing multiplicity to an arborescent unity that is trying to gain control of the mass of proliferating phenomena in the psyche that Deleuze and Guattari are very comfortable with, this molar, or rather micromolecular mass of multiplicities that they're very comfortable with. And so they describe this dream, and then they describe another dream of a different patient who has a dream that she's part of a crowd out in the middle of the desert. And they say then that both dreams are manifestations of multiplicities upon bodies without organs. And so in this chapter they introduce the much talked about and much misunderstood, I believe, concept of the body without organs. And they say that the body without organs, basically what it is any kind of a ground or field of intensities and potentialities upon which multiplicities appear as organs. The multiplicities appear as organs upon bodies without organs, and then they are able to link to form assemblages which holonomically link together to form the organized plane of organization, where you have larger and larger assemblages of assemblages that simply aggregate and organize. But bodies without organs, multiplicities presuppose bodies without organs, and bodies without organs and multiplicities are linked with, not multiplicities so much, but bodies without organs are linked with the plane of consistency that we talked about last time. So the plane of consistency is actually the sum total of the world's bodies without organs, which are these fields of intensities and potential energies upon which the multiplicities can organize themselves. And so they say that, note that in the dream of the wolf man, the tree functions as the body without organs upon which the wolf pack as a rhizome sits or rests or organizes itself. In the dream of the desert, the woman who's part of a crowd in the middle of the desert, the crowd is a multiplicity, a rhizome basically, that appears on the desert as the body without organs there. So the body without organs in each case is this ground upon which a rhizome or a multiplicity connects and assembles itself, and then can then proceed to build higher structures and or dismantle them. So that's basically in a nutshell what the body without organs is, just in a quick sketch. Now, in Difference and Repetition, Deleuze had made a distinction between intensivities and extensivities. The difference between them is that extensivities are those aspects of the physical world that are divisible, that are measurable, that are quantitative, they're extensive, and they can be divided. For example, a body of water can be divided separately into two bodies of water. But the intensivities are those aspects of phenomena that cannot be so divided without fundamentally changing the nature of the system. So let's say the body of water has a 90-degree temperature, and if you divide it into two separate bodies of water, now you have two volumes of water, but you don't have two different temperatures of 45 degrees each. You have simply two different temperatures. And so intensities cannot be divided. They're those properties of a system which cannot be divided without changing the nature of the system. So they're intensities. And the intensities, as they make clear in this chapter, then become linked with the plane of consistency in 1,000 Plateaus, and of course the extensivities become linked with the plane of organization, the plane of what they call in this chapter macromolecular multiplicities. That's on the plane of organization. On the plane of consistency we have micromolecular multiplicities. So you have multiplicities organized in different ways on both planes, but the plane of consistency privileges the rhizome and the pack against the mass. They also make a distinction in this chapter between the pack and the mass. The mass is simply a crowd that is hierarchically organized by a leader. The pack, on the other hand, has no hierarchy and is limited as to its number, and each individual in that pack is his own unity and does his own thing while belonging to the pack at the same time. And so one of the things about 1,000 Plateaus that I like is that it gives us a nice snapshot, a nice vision of the tribalism that has entered the world since post-World War II, and that I think that philosophers like Gebser don't take into account. The integral consciousness structure, as I was critiquing earlier, does not take the breakdown of the society, its centrifugal tendency to splinter apart. The ego is splintering into a mono or into a multi-egoic personality in our society, just as the civilizations are breaking down and disintegrating into tribalism, which is the equivalent in the outer world of the multi-egoic personality in the inner world. Tribalism is one of the primary phenomena that we have trouble with nowadays. Tribes are basically rhizomes moving across bodies without organs, whether the body without an organ without organs is the desert or the steppe or this or that particular geographical locale or what have you. The tribe is a multiplicity, a rhizome that organizes itself in this fashion. And they take the point of view in this book of the tribe. That's the interesting thing. They're privileging the point of view. They're looking at these phenomena now of these high civilizations that organize themselves on the plane of organization hierarchically from the point of view of the nomads and the barbarians, as it were. They don't use that term, they call them nomads, that exist in the interstices between these civilizations on the smooth plains between the stratified worlds of these the striated spaces of the civilizations themselves. And so they privilege the point of view of the nomad. They're more interested in the rhizome, the nomad, the multiplicity, just as they're interested in the dissolution of the subject in the multi-egoic personality. And so we have a connection. Note that the reason there is no subject and the reason D&G dismantled the subject is because on the plane of consistency there is no subject when you have a tribe. You have the subject cannot emerge, that the ego dissolves back into the pack, because tribes and packs are collective entities that have a kind of hive mind. The ego cannot exist as an entity unto itself on the plane of consistency. It doesn't, it's not there. So the subject correspondingly dissolves into a collective assemblage on the plane of consistency. And so this is part of Deleuze and Guattari's attempt to dismantle the subject and get rid of it. The subject appears only on the plane of organization.